I appreciate you explaining kind of earlier that you had some members that are like, I don't need help. I don't need your help. But now you have early career people. How do you encourage them? How do you help them figure out what they need?
I think for once I'm lucky. I have some really excellent people. I mean, my group is totally awesome. Some of them are here, right? Yeah. But one thing I also have the advantage of, we hire really good people. And so, yes, I try to give them advice, but a lot of it is listening to them, really understand and ask them questions. Because in many cases, they're able to come up with a lot of good solutions themselves when they start thinking about it. And that's also part of their development, further increase their skills. So, so that's basically, I'll try to spend the time, try to win their trust, try to get to know them better. And I feel like our relationship has really improved over the last, well, it's now several years since I actually got twice as much funding as before. Before, it was really hard to do it with, you know, if you have 10% of your time to devote to that, but then you still have 90% technical work to do. It's hard, right? But it's better now. So.
Yeah, I could definitely hear that. If they think of it, it's even easier to encourage them and nudge them towards that opportunity. You should definitely do this. So kind of in addition to nurturing the technical needs of your groups, I know you've both created or kind of nurtured different kind of network interests. Maybe we'll start with Cindy talking about, there was a group empowering women in computing. Maybe you could talk about how the group got built. What was your part in it?
Yeah, so when I started as a new employee in GSCAD, Marisol, what became my group leader, and she was a huge mentor for me. I don't see her here, she might be online, but yeah, she was a huge mentor for me. And coming into the role, I had this feeling of like, I'm not good enough. I'm never going to be good enough. I didn't work hard enough to get here, or, you know, what have you, all of this negative self-talk. And so I would always go into Marisol's office and close the door and just talk to her about all of this. And she told me, you know, it's funny because there's other women in my group who are having very similar conversations with me behind closed doors. Maybe we should all meet for lunch one day and you guys could talk to each other about, you know, these very female specific issues that you're having with not feeling good enough, or, you know, just issues that maybe felt like because I'm a woman, I'm experiencing these. But if you look around, you're actually realizing everyone experiences some version of this, male, female, it doesn't really matter. And so we informally met over lunch, we connected, and the group started growing, and it got up to maybe 35 or 40 different people where we would just meet and talk about, it was called the Women's Empowerment Group, and we would just meet and talk about issues related to, you know, feeling like you're the only, or at the time in my group, I was the only female out of 30 people in my group. So I felt very siloed. I felt like everyone noticed that I was the only female, even if that wasn't the case. And so we just started talking. It became more formalized group where we would have, you know, these meetings that had like a topic that somebody suggested. And it was really just a great network of women supporting women, even just to listen to these issues that you may feel like you're alone in having somebody that's listening and saying, you know, I felt like that too, whether it's your group leader or a new employee who just started. Seeing that everyone is feeling like this really made us all feel like, okay, this is a normal thing. You know, I shouldn't be ashamed to talk about this with other people and know that other people are actually going through a similar thing.
Yeah, it definitely helps. It's interesting once you define a place where we can have these conversations, that you find out people are bringing things up that you didn't know they were going through, or and you hear about the impact of leaders just sort of making these kind of spaces. Well, you've also started up a book club in your area. Could you share about that and the kind of, I think Carol brought up one of the books probably that you're going through. Yeah.
Right. That was the most recent book. But yes, actually, I was looking back since I knew about this question, and I realized it actually started in 2019. So it's 5 years ago. And at that time, it started with two guys. My oldest son gave my husband a book to read for his birthday or something, and which was Daring Greatly by Brené Brown. I don't know who of you knows this book. And my husband was so excited about the book. And my husband, he's the guy, when he's excited about something, he tells everybody about it. So he got me excited about it. And then I thought, you know what? This was a great book. It talks a lot about increasing your confidence and doing this. And I thought, this is really what women usually lack. They lack the confidence, right? I know I'm a woman, I do, and I know many others. And so I thought, why don't I start a book? I want the other women also to read this book, right? And so I went to my boss and said, hey, can you give me money to buy the books? I want to start this. And he was very supportive. And so we started that in 2019 before the pandemic. And so we first met in person, but then the pandemic happened and we continued to meet and we read different books over the years, right? The most recent one is How Women Rise. And it was really exciting to me to be able to talk. I mean, I learned a lot myself just from reading these books. You know, we kept looking for different books that helped, like there was the Confidence Code and other books, you know. And so it also helped us to have good discussions among each other during the pandemic. Carol also joined us, so that helped to get some more experienced people to talk with the career one and give more input to them. So, and overall, I have to say, lately it's been a little harder to meet because all these women, they have started to have more leadership roles. They're more busy and it's hard to find. That's a good thing. It means the book club is working, right?
Exactly.
It's harder to find the time to meet together. So.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned what the outcome has been. Apparently some career growth there. How about have you heard any feedback from people in your groups, like the impact on them? And how about you as leaders? How has it helped you?
It helped me, of course, also. But I've been hearing people, which was always encouraging, saying, oh, yeah, I just used this in my project and it was really helppful to me, right? I've just done this here, right? And so, yes, these were great books, you know, and I have to say, I wish I known some of that, because when I became a group leader way back, I had no clue, or leading a project, how do you actually do this? What do you do? And there's a lot of very good information out there. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned also just how do you find the resources? You were able to go to a leader and say, I want to make this work, you know, and you got support right away, but yeah. How did you find resources to both build this idea for this group, and then how did you sustain it? Because it's been many years now. That's really impressive.
Well, I think we've been looking for books. Of course, I asked my members of the book club, what do you want? And I think at first I started to grab different books, right? And said, which one do we actually want? I'm just searching around online, Amazon or whatever, and trying to find new books. And not all of the books were that great, but many of them actually are. And our most recent book, How Women Rise, Carol had it up there, is a really good one, which I just found in between. I know there was a time period where we were all kind of tired of reading books together and we just met for lunch, you know. So that's great too, right? It was more like your Empower group, right? And then that was great too, right? So we can just chat and talk. But then recently I found this book and I thought, you know, maybe it's time to start a book again. And so we're reading this one now. So.
Yeah, and Cindy, you mentioned you worked with Marisa to start this group. She probably does because she has so many things that she's up to. So how did you sustain it? How did you work through that transition?
I think just putting the word out that this existed, a lot of women were interested and they're like, I want to be empowered. Like, let's talk about it. You guys are talking about women specific issues. I want to be involved in that. And, you know, it was during the pandemic also. And so community was a huge part. And I think moving that idea forward is like, if you create a community that people are passionate about, nothing's more powerful than that. Like, get people in a room who are passionate about this thing to start talking to each other about, you know, about something that they're passionate about, especially coming out of the pandemic when people were at home. Like for us, with a small kid at home, like for 4 months, I was going crazy. Like, let me talk to anybody else. But like, please get me in a room with women. Now we could talk about, I don't know, anything else than, you know, Blippi or
So Rika, you've had a long career, different roles, different focuses. Could you describe how your leadership has changed over the years?
So I should say when I started at the lab, I was actually working part-time. I was very thankful Steve Ashby to allow me to work part-time. So at that time, I was not interested in any leadership role. And I have to also honestly say, I was never a person who really tried to pursue leadership roles. It wasn't really my character, right? But I've taken opportunities when they came along. And I have to say at the very beginning, because I was working part-time, I had 2 small children. I'm living an hour away, so I had a lot of driving, and so that was a little difficult. As a matter of fact, there was a time when my project lead was trying to split the project and asked me if I wanted to lead the other part, and I said no. I didn't do it at that time. But then eventually later, things got better. You know, kids get older and life is less, and my mother-in-law started to live with us, so she was helping. I was able to do more. And so I first started to just lead some sub-project and for an LDRD, which was focusing on numerical methods for parallel computers, for petascale computing at that time. And I really enjoyed that. It was a really great project because there were just 4 of us, but I think we all worked really well together. There was no ego, no nothing in there, and everybody had their part to work on. And so I think this is really the best, if you can have a project that way where each person has their own thing to do. We all respect each other. It was really awesome. But then later there were other opportunities where I led a project on, I was given to lead a project on improving our library so they can start working towards GPUs. And that was sort of our different math projects within. And then eventually there were other opportunities for leadership as part of the FASTMath Institute, which is more multi-institutional, where they gave me the section on linear solvers, and now it's nonlinear solvers. So I was in contact with other people from other labs. And then finally, the XSDK project, which ended in December, which was really the biggest leadership opportunity I had as far as technical work is concerned, because that was very challenging. Since it was a large project, which it's actually good. At first, it wasn't as big, but then it grew with adding more sub-projects in it, but I was still in charge of the whole thing. Needed to make sure we had a lot of milestones that had to be done, and I was sort of responsible making sure they get done, even so I put other people in charge. Of course, there's no way you can do it all. We did have virtual meetings, obviously, because there were even people from Germany involved. So we had a very international community there. Of course, during the pandemic, it was easy. We already knew how to do virtual, right? So that was good. But I think I also realized it required a lot of different skills to do the work, which I don't have. And so that was the scary part about this. But one thing I learned, it's okay. You don't have to have all the skills. It's important that the people in your project have the skills, right? And you need to treat them with respect. You need to appreciate them, which I did, obviously, because if you don't have the skills, you only have to appreciate the people, because you can't do it, right? But it's possible to do that, right? And so my confidence grew there, because first I was like the person who did, first I thought, oh, I really don't know it, you can do this. And I'm like, well, I don't know it either. How can I do it, right? But I just did, right? And you learn as you go along. And that's the important part. Don't be afraid of not doing this, right? Because just be grateful for the people who actually help you with there. And everybody there was helpful. I mean, I had a lot of excellent people in this project who really made sure that the whole thing could happen. But yes, you still have to lead. You have to make sure to remind them when needed and do all this. And be always appreciative of them, because they're really important. And then they'll be okay with you leading if you do, you know? So that's basically that.
Yeah, I really like how you brought up how you scaled up in your leadership and having to now, the next tier, trust them, trust their skill sets. And so how did you identify those needs for your different areas?
Well, in some ways, they were kind of natural there, since the project had existed before. So it was helpful I already knew who they were. But I think also one of the challenges when you have virtual meetings is that it's really hard to get people. You don't really see them because there are too many of them. They don't all talk. But you know which are the ones that will comment, which are the ones that speak up. And they're usually, in a lot of ways, the natural leaders. Some of them were local here, so I already knew, kind of, and that helped. And so they're the ones. In some cases, I was just asking them and see if they would want to do it. And they did. There was an opportunity for them to grow as well if they hadn't had any leadership opportunities before. And generally, I trusted that they would be able to get the job done, and they generally did, right? And so, yeah, sometimes I had to help a bit, but generally I did not, so.
Great. And yeah, looking forward to Sarah Osborne's talk this afternoon. She'll dive more into the this project, the exascale project.
Yeah, Sarah was a very big help for this whole project. She was there always taking notes, which is a really hard thing to do, by the way. I hate taking notes, and I'm really bad at it.
Good
So
to
it's
find
good to
someone.
have a capable person there.
Very nice. Okay, so yeah, switching to kind of your impact on your group for Cindy, you know, as leaders, we're supposed to provide feedback, or we're encouraged to provide feedback to our group, but sometimes we don't hear feedback the other way. I'm curious if you have an example where someone might have thanked you for it, or kind of how you've impacted them.
Yeah, you sent me this question ahead of time, and I took like 2 days staring at a blank Word doc, like trying to fill in the perfect answer for this question. But actually, one situation comes to mind. So one of the women in the women's empowerment group called me up one day and said, "Do you have time to talk about like opportunities and kind of career trajectory and stuff like that?" And I was like, "Sure." And it essentially was a 45-minute conversation where she was telling me about her current role and how she didn't feel like she fit in. And she had these dreams of going to San Francisco and becoming a data scientist in San Francisco and eating at San Francisco cafes and all those things. Like, oh, that sounds very nice. But what I realized is she's doing most of the talking. I'm just asking her questions, kind of clarify, like, you know, what do you mean? You know, why is that important to you? Why are you drawn to this? All of that stuff. So we get down with the conversation, and she ended up getting a job in San Francisco, and she eats at her San Francisco cafes and everything. And she moved there, and she called me up after that, maybe like 6 months after that. And she said, "I really want to thank you for listening to me and giving me advice, which I didn't feel like I gave, and you know, just having my back and like giving me the confirmation that I needed that this was what was right in my life at the time." And I felt like I was just listening to somebody, you know, kind of talk. So I appreciated that she thanked me, but really like my role in that was so small, and it was really to listen to somebody who's trying to process all of this in real time. And so, you know, if you guys are struggling with a difficult decision, or, you know, Carol talked about welcoming kids into the world and you want to know, how does that work for you? Like, don't be afraid to talk to people. And sometimes it's just you kind of getting it all out into the open and putting it out into the universe and trying to process that in real time while somebody listens to maybe all of the small worries that you have, but maybe the bigger ones too.
So yeah, how about for the audience, if they have someone they want to thank, do you have advice for them?
Do it.
Yeah, just get it done.
So, like, okay. I tell Jessie all the time, Jessie's so great. If you guys don't know, Jessie Gaylor, she's the division leader of GSCAD. She's so great at sending emails out to the division that say, "Thanks, Marisa and Mary, for putting on the WiDS committee." And it takes literally nothing, like no money to do this. It takes a fraction of time, but like the impact of showing gratitude and showing appreciation for other people it's great. Whether it's a group leader to employee or boss to, you know, employee, or if it's the other way around, it takes no time, and it really can build this positive repertoire with somebody that, you know, you see them, you see the effort that they put in. I thanked my mentors probably 1 billion times for just answering the silly questions that I had. How do I launch this? How do I do that as I was coming up in my career? And it's really the people that took the time to sit with me that changed, you know, essentially the trajectory of my career. And I cannot thank them enough.
I like that. Okay, I have one more question for you all. We are really thinking about data at this meeting, and as leaders, we want to know whether our efforts are making a difference. I'm curious, are there metrics that you're paying attention to see are you making an impact? Yeah. Maybe about culture, something like that.
So that's a good question. I mean, I saw the question before and I was thinking about this. I mean, I honestly have to say I wasn't really sitting there trying to evaluate this all the time, but it's a good thing to think about. And as far as my group is concerned, I'm kind of seeing how they're actually advancing in their career. That's to me as one and see how they're advancing in their rankings and things like that. That shows me people well, they're getting their work done and so on. I know you also mentioned diversity, and so that's a hard one right now. I know at least in CAS there are definitely efforts being made. We're trying to increase the amount of women, but it's a really hard one because you have to have them apply and then they have to accept the position when they get the job offered. And I think that's again some difficulties now. I personally, my group is very diverse. I have a lot of women in there actually, but that's partially because I was fighting for them way back when they split up my group. They ended up moving all the women in the other half. And I said, no, you can't take my women away.
For you, yeah.
And they did. So I do have, 5 right now, 6 with my, I don't know. So it's quite a lot for 16 people actually. I do have one African-American in the group. There's one Asian. Yes, so there is certainly, 2 Asians, I guess. So there's definitely diversity in my group, but in some ways I feel like it's been more artificial because I took a lot of the women that are not in the other groups, right? It's not totally fair.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep an eye on metrics and measure something that shows that we're making some progress. So one of the things that I'm excited about right now is how many programs the lab is engaging with that promote diversity. This isn't something that I think historically, even 10 years ago, we were as involved with diversity measures like we are now. WiDS was started 7 years ago, right?
I
It's
know.
been running strong. At least the local chapter of WiDS is running strong. Other outreach programs for traditionally underserved communities like our Data Science Challenge program and other programs are cropping up all over the place. And it's really exciting, just the number and the impact to people that we're having, at least here at the lab. The other thing is to look around a room and say, I'm not the only woman anymore. That isn't a hard metric. It's not a hard count, but it feels so good to see the new employees that are coming in are much more diverse, I think, than traditionally had been here. You go to a new employee orientation and you can see all different kinds of people there. And I love that. That's not a hard measure, not by any means, but just looking around a room and feeling like I sit here. There's more than one person that's a female. There's more than one person that, didn't go to an Ivy League school. There's so many different layers of diversity that we can unpeel here. We're starting to see all different types of people being hired. I think it's a really exciting time, honestly, right now.
And on that very optimistic note, questions from the audience or online? Yes.
I love that last discussion. We are in people analytics, so definitely topic very near and dear to us. Just was wondering if at the laboratory you have something like an employee engagement survey where employees throughout get to share kind of their sentiment and questions on the survey around things like I can be myself at work, which talk about more than diversity, but more like the inclusion component, right? You could be diverse, but you really feel like you belong. So just was curious about that.
Yeah, the lab definitely does track. There's this culture survey that they put out that they track from, I think it's a couple times every other year or something, that they're tracking those type of behaviors. So how included do employees feel in addition to the traditional diversity metrics?
Yeah, inclusion is a hard thing to track. I feel like as the training has happened, we've had different training. How do I know it's making progress? I still think that's an open question. Metrics are hard.
Yeah, I think it was basically the two culture surveys they did where they kind of looked how has it improved, and there was improvement, right? But yes, we're certainly not there yet. But there's always you can always do better. But I'm overall very encouraged because I feel like a lot of effort is being made for people to feel more included compared to. I mean, I've been here almost 26 years, so I think things have really improved. Although I do have to say, CASC, where I'm at, has always been a good place to be. So I enjoyed. I feel like. Generally, I felt like included in many ways, but I'm not sure that was the case for the whole lab. And so seeing how our current director also is really supportive of trying to improve the overall atmosphere is really good.
So I lead an Ocean Epic programmers meeting on a bi-weekly basis, and I try to engage a diverse group of programmers through Zoom. And that it's difficult, but I can't see, I always present a topic, and then I have an open forum, and this is an hour-long meeting. So my topic lasts half an hour, and then I have open forum for at least half an hour to 15 minutes to half an hour. How do I get this diverse group to engage more in bringing forth their problems and the struggles they have with their coding or their integration of Epic and or not, it doesn't have to necessarily be Epic specific, but just it's like pulling teeth to get them to talk. You know, programmers are cats, and hurting them is a challenge. So if you guys have any advice, I always feel like I just don't know enough to get them to engage.
So are they all is this all virtual?
It's all virtual.
They're all over the place, right?
Yeah, it's all Northern California.
Yeah, because that's hard, because I'm thinking what helped, of course, if you have an opportunity to even go out for a lunch, dinner, anything like that, right? But it's hard to do that virtually.
I could say, like, from my experience, what I would recommend is, one, ask everybody to turn their cameras on. I don't know what it is about video, like people just feel like you're staring at me, I'm staring at you, we may as well say something. Like, if you have the video off, which a lot of programmers do not like to turn their video on either. Another recommendation that I have is, you know, can you share some of your struggles that you've had with programming and just be like real and show that vulnerability, and maybe you'll get vulnerability and suffering and whatever feeling back, right? It can be hard because as a moderator of the group, you want to have this professional appearance, but what's really going to hopefully connect with people is if you open up to them about, you know, I really had this bug in my code. It took me 4 days, and it was, you know, I spelled the variable wrong or something, and whatever your coding struggle was the last 2 weeks, maybe if you share that, that may be like, oh, I hate it when that happens. That happened to me last week, or, you know, just be.
I have an idea if, you know, everyone has different communication styles. Some people need to prepare before a meeting before they'll speak up. So maybe, you know, assign a couple people to kind of get their latest thing they're struggling with and ask with advice. That's a good idea. And it encourages definitely the quiet people, because they probably have been thinking things but not willing to share spontaneously.
Yeah, usually it's good if you get somebody to get started. So if you know some of these people maybe better, you can kind of make them even your helpers there. But I don't know how well you know the people in your group. So
next page. Do you have any advice for instilling confidence in prospective talent? I'm involved with recruitment, and one of the things that I noticed kind of on the topic of diversity is lack of confidence in that candidate pool we're pulling from. Have you ever encountered a situation like that, and how do you handle it?
So I'm sorry, you said lack of confidence in what?
In a candidate pool. So for interviewing particularly, I'm involved with recruitment and interviewing for interns in my division. And in some of the female candidates I personally know, I feel like because of lack of they're not performing as well as their technical aptitude is. So how do you instill confidence for people that, you know, aren't necessarily your peers and full-time employees, but are looking to start their career? Can I jump in?
So, if you have an opportunity to do a mock interview with some of these candidates, it really helps because they don't have the feedback of, one, their CV doesn't say everything that they actually do, and also the way they're talking about their skill set. They might be downplaying something that they should really be highlighting, or they should be showing leadership on something, even if it's not formal. So there's all kind of gotchas that a student may not know. Oh, this counts. I should talk about this. So if you could do mock interviews with them, that really helps.
Of course, give them some of the books to read. Bring it up on that. That's helpful, you know. Generally, it's good to give them encouragement because a lot of times they don't realize it. Maybe sometimes if there's a way to even have the mock interview and film them so they can see, you know, how it is. And look and say, well, here you could speak up. I mean, or and just remind them they're actually really good. I mean, yeah, it's a hard one. So sometimes it takes time for them to really get over that. I know, it's a really long time.
I heard, I don't know if y'all listened to the Mel Robbins podcast, but she did like an episode on confidence. And one of the things she talked about was a different definition of confidence than typically people think of is the confidence is really the willingness to try, right? Are you willing to try to do a good job at this thing? And I think once I heard that definition, like, I'm not a confident person either. I don't have any confidence in myself. But am I willing to try to do a good job to make this work? Absolutely. Right. So I guess that does mean I do have confidence in myself and my abilities, and maybe reframing that or talking to these people about, you know, you don't have to know everything, and that's okay. But like, how are you going to figure out how to get to end goal, right? How are you going to figure out this hard programming problem that you don't know the answer to up front? You have to be willing to try. That's the first step, right? Like, don't feel like just because you don't know the answer, you're a dead fish in the water. Like, let's start talking about it. And, you know, on interview panels, a lot of the times that's all that we're looking for is like, can you talk it through like this really hard programming, break it down into digestible chunks, and then how would you take that chunk and try to figure it out? And just keep moving on.
I have a question about like, so as more women take leadership roles, you see a lot more women in the areas of things, but is there a balance between like people or like women taking these positions, people being offered these positions because we're women, as in like putting work off on women? I see this a lot, like in that situation. And so like it's a part because you're like, oh yeah, a lot of women are in power, a lot of women are like we have a whole committee of women, but the men didn't want the position. So then now, like, I don't know, have you guys encountered this at all?
You repeat the question.
So the question is, how do you kind of balance like, are we moving up because like we want to, or because the men don't want these positions anymore? Because sometimes they're positions that are not technical, they're more like side work for them, and a lot of them want to work on their side work. So yeah, I don't know. It's more, it's not a good question. It's more like, have you noticed this? Or
So are the women just taking this because they feel like they have to, or are the women taking this because they want to? Because if they want to, it's okay. But if they don't, they should just learn to say no. If the guys say no to it, you know, eventually you get more guys on there again, right? Because some people will have to take this. I don't know how many of these situations are there. I know one of the things we read in the book we were reading, How Women Rise, is that women sometimes take on stuff they don't really want to actually because they just feel they should or whatever. So we also need to learn how to say no to certain things if we don't want to do it. However, if you're on a committee and you really want to do it, there's nothing wrong with it, and just go for it. Right?
The question is like, how do you say no? Because maybe the problem is like women get asked first. Oh, maybe because she's a woman, she wants to plan this. you know, not the man wouldn't want to find this. And so then now you're, oh, maybe I should say yes. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess
It
you
is
just
an
have to.
industry, but do I have the time to say yes? You know?
I think you really have to just think through if you really want to do this and if it really benefits you to do this right now, and be willing to just say no to it if it doesn't, if it actually even might be a hindrance to other things you want to do. But yeah, you just have to, trying to do it in a diplomatic way is always good. That's what you were asking. I think it's hard to say because it depends on your situation. You would have to frame it according to your situation.
I saw one more hand. I'm going to sneak it in. Hopefully it's a quick question that we had lunch.
I was just gonna ask, like, what leadership opportunities did you guys have, like, in college, and how did you approach leadership opportunities in college?
Actually, my college was so long ago. that really there wasn't. Oh, actually, that's not totally true. Actually, I'm from Germany, so I was a student in Germany. And yes, there were leadership actually opportunities because we had some kind of community center and there was some kind of political kind of structure. So yes, you could say I was actually willing to take on a role as being the representative for the students on the board where they assigned the work, right? And so I did do this because they needed somebody. This was just to get them grading roles or where they could actually get some little jobs at the university. So I took that on because I knew that's to do it. It turned out to be really good for me because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have gotten my grading role. So we were trying to eliminate it, but because I was there, they didn't. But that was an opportunity where I actually took a leadership role. It was not with my technical skills, but it was outside and it's more like student government. I don't know if that answers your question.
So yeah, I think like a lot of the times people are looking for the plum position, right? Like that big leadership role, it's going to change my life. But I think like even less so than that, that's a very important skill to learn in college is how to speak up and talk about technical ideas, whether that's a team lead for your group project, right? Like assign everybody tasks and you speak on behalf of the group, or like go to these clubs and give your opinion on, you know, what they're talking about. That's a really important skill to learn in college. You know, it can come in the form of like, I'm really passionate about new moms. I'm going to go be the co-chair for the new moms group or something. I don't know. In college, there's a ton of clubs that you can get involved with. But I think if your passion is right and you start really refining that skill of speaking up when it's hard, like if people ask for your opinion, I still do this, right? Like, what does everybody think? I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to be embarrassed or something. Like finding that skill is really important so that when you come out of college, you're already ahead of everybody else in the fact that you're comfortable speaking your ideas, especially to groups of people, and really like committing to your idea and backing it up technically. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Cindy and Ulrike. So many tidbits. I took notes. I'm going to think about on what you talked about. And yeah, let's thank our panelists again.